Hello everyone, and welcome to our next video in the series on the Long War from Jade Productions. I am Jay, it's nice to have you here, and today, in this video, we will be going over the supplemental material for the Long War, and the Space Marines First Founding Chapters supplement. And, of course, we have to start with the First Legion, the first founders, the Dark Angels. So, for those of you who are not aware and have jumped into this video, the Long War is a free fan-made edition of Warhammer 40,000 that is an alternative to the current edition, and it is completely free. It is made by the community, for the community, capturing the theme, spirit, and lore of the game, and going back to the roots of the game, and basically, the system is its own system, built off of a streamlined version, and very much, very cleaned up version of the old Warhammer 40,000 editions, like, from 3rd edition through to 7th edition, because that was all just one edition with various changes. 4th from 7th. 3rd, sort of. And yeah, so that is the Long War, and previous video, we looked at the Space Marines, and now there have been a few mechanic changes, because as this is a fan-based thing, and people give feedback and play these games and play these armies, the rules can change to make this a wholly better system, so that things that are broken get fixed, things that are wrong get changed as quickly as possible. So, there have been some changes from the Space Marine overview I've done. We're a good 4 or 5 versions. I'm not really going to address any of those changes and what they are in this video, unless they become actually pertinent to what we're talking about here, in which case you might notice some discrepancies between this one and between this video and the others in this series and the videos that come before it, and this is simply because I'm making these videos and I'm going through all of this with the versions I have at the time, so keep that in mind. So, let us dive into the Dark Angels. So, the Dark Angels are the First Legion, and they are quite notorious for being very secretive, very stubborn, but they're also very knightly and courageous. They've got a long-standing feud with some of their own who went traitor during the events after the Horus Heresy, and they've also got long-standing feuds with some of their own brethren, such as the Space Wolves. So, when you select to go for Dark Angels, not just Dark Angel successors as presented in the Core Codex, but Dark Angels proper from this supplement, you get the following allegiance. And so your allegiance is your primary thing about you, changes your keywords, and it gives you the allegiance special rule. So the first things first is Dark Angels get Grim Resolve, as the first of their 3 things. So Grim Resolve replaces And They Shall Know No Fear and Angels of Death with itself, and Dark Angels gain Stubborn and Fear 2. So this is just a flat upgrade over the standard And They Shall Know No Fear and Angels of Death that regular Space Marines get. Regular Space Marines are only stubborn when they're near objectives, and they're typically only Fear 1 when they have a higher leadership than their opponent that they're fighting in combat. Here, the Dark Angels, they are just purely stubborn all the time, and they're Fear 2, guaranteed, so they're spooky. But this does come with a downside, and they miss out on the And They Shall Know No Fear part of getting to automatically rally should they break. So you're a lot less likely to break, but now you're also a little bit more, when you do break, it's a little bit worse for you. In addition, Dark Angels units gain a Feel No Pain 6+, which is great. And Primaris units, which would normally have the Feel No Pain 6+ from And They Shall Know No Fear, instead get a 5+. So, your army's less likely to break, a little bit more durable, and that much more spooky as a flat upgrade over the regular Space Marine stuff. You are regular Space Marines, is your core trait, but better, which is fitting for the First Legion, which laid the foundation and template for the other Space Marines. Then, you have Broken Wings. Now, Broken Wings is one special rule with 2 parts to it. The first part is that Dark Angel's bike, cavalry, and aircraft type units gain the Ravenwing keyword. And that Ravenwing units gain the Scout and Skilled Rider special rules. So they get a pre-game movement, and they always count as being in cover. So long as they moved. So that's pretty good for just that little bit more extra movement, and getting up the board, and keeping yourself alive. Then you have Deathwing. And so Dark Angels with the Veteran and Terminator keywords gain the Deathwing keyword. So Deathwing gain +1 to the weapon skill characteristic when they're attacking with a Power Sword, Relic Blade, Calibanite Blade, Tyrannic Great Blade, or Chainsword. Deathwing also gain preferred enemy characters. So that's really strong, and we'll get to that in a bit, and that makes your veterans super spooky. And then the Dark Angels have some restrictions, because the Dark Angels don't follow the Codex Astartes completely. They have some differences in how they run stuff. So, they can't field Tactical Terminators, they can't field Assault Terminators, they can't field Tartaros, Cataphracti. They don't have access to Stormhawk Interceptors, Storm Talon Gunships, Storm Raven Gunships, Scout Bikes, Landspeeder Storms, Assault Centurions, or Devastator Centurions. Very important to keep those restrictions in mind when you're playing Dark Angels. Then the Dark Angels have a bunch of unique gear. They can take Watches in the Dark, which can just give a character Deny the Witch for extra messing with your opponent's psychic powers. They have their unique stasis weapons, which are a really strong weapon, but there's not many of them scattered throughout the army. So you have things like the Rift Cannon, which is on one of their flyers, which is Strength 10, AP 1, Heavy 1, but and that's already ludicrously powerful, but it's one shot, so you're going to keep that in mind against its preferred target. That said, it does have the Stasis special rule, which the target that gets hit by it has its weapon skill, attacks, and initiative reduced to 1 until the end of the turn. And so there are some really cool combos you can do with the Stasis weapons. The Stasis bombs are a bombing run version, which is also on one of your flyers. And then there are Stasis grenade launchers, which some of your Ravenwing Knights have, which allow them to do really great combos and work the Dark Angels together between melee and shooting. And it creates some great synergies between the Ravenwing and the Deathwing to get in there and kick some butt. Then there's Tyrannic Greatswords, which are a fantastic weapon that you can exchange Relic Blades or Thunderhammers for just a few extra points. They're basically Relic Blades, but they have an extra point of strength, and they have sweeping, and they're two-handed. So you don't get a bonus attack for having an extra close combat weapon or a pistol, but if there's at least 3 guys in base contact with you, with the guy who actually equipped with this weapon, he'll get 2 extra attacks to make up for that. So very good when outnumbered. Very good for thinning hordes and fighting things that, are going to outnumber you in a combat that are going to have smaller bases or pile in further. Then you have the Calibanite weapons. These are additional weapons that the Dark Angels have access to. So there's a basic Calibanite blade, which is it's a standard power sword, but it has the parry special rule, which gives the equipped model a 4+ feel no pain in the combat phase against wounds inflicted by melee weapons. So your Dark Angels are really good at parrying blocks when, and blocking and sword fighting when they've got swords. So, and the Calibanite blade is made for that especially, so it's very, very good. Then you have the Corvus Hammer, which is Strength +1, it's AP 5. It's a specialist weapon, so you're not getting any bonus attacks unless you've also got another specialist weapon in the other hand, but if you do, you're getting an extra 2 attacks. In addition, it's crushing 6 up. So on a 6 to wound, it will deal 2 wounds to the target. So it's pretty okay for something that's going to, on average, be hitting at Strength 5, AP 5. It's not the amazing thing that it is in other editions, but it's a very solid weapon, and it's pretty cheap as well. Then you have the Mace of Absolution, which is Strength ×2, it's AP 4, so it's a little less AP on the Mace. It's a specialist weapon, It's concussive, so anyone who gets bonked with it is going down to initiative 1. It's crushing 5+ for 2 wounds on a 5 or a 6. But it's Order of the Inner Circle, which means it can only be put on things that have the Inner Circle special rule, which we'll get to in a bit. The Flail of the Unforgiven is a very cool sweeping weapon that some of the Deathwing have access to. It's Strength +2, it's AP 3. It's also a specialist weapon, but it's sweeping. It's sweeping too, so it can get you extra attacks as you're whipping this thing around and hitting multiple guys. But it's also Order of the Inner Circle as well. And then there's the Halberd of Caliban, which also has sweeping 1, so it's a little less sweeping. It's two-handed, it's Strength +2, it's AP 3. So there's a lot of sweeping for this faction. They've got some very good sweeping and very good crushing weapons in moderation amongst their unique gear, which let them deal with big enemy tough units or lots of enemy goodies. So you're very versatile as the Dark Angels with your weapon options. Now, we go down into the Dark Angels Warlord traits. So, the Warlord traits, I think, are really, really cool for the Dark Angels. So, the first one you have is Fury of the Lion. And this one is really strong, and it's really rare as a mechanic. There's not a lot of reroll charges, but it allows you to reroll charges for your Warlord and any attached unit in the charge phase. In addition, any Dark Angels that can see that unit during the phase, regardless of whether the charge was successful, also get to re-roll their phases. So your Warlord can lead the charge and in through a single phase, have all of his guys kind of just sweeping as well. So it's very good for getting that massive hammer off with a bunch of melee units. Very good, especially when coming down from Deep Strike with, say, Deathwing. Very good at getting there into the fight. On the other hand, you have the Calibanite Knight. So the Warlord always hits on a 3+ in the combat phase with melee attacks, unless their weapon skill characteristic is already higher than their opponent's target weapon skill. So you're always going to be hitting on 3+, unless you would be hitting them on 2+. That's very strong, and I really like that Warlord trait. It's very cool for a lot of combat-focused characters. Then you have the Brilliant Strategist. And this is another one of those things of the Dark Angels being very versatile, able to do a lot of different things, being the sort of foundation. Because this is something very similar to what Ultramarines have, but it's a little bit smaller in scope. So at the start of each of your phases, your Warlord and the attached unit get to gain one of the following special rules, and that could either be running faster and charging faster, rerolling 1s to wound against enemies, rerolling all wounds against monsters, or rerolling all penetrations against tank hunter, against vehicles or fortifications. So, very good for letting you very quickly tailor your character and any unit he's accompanying on the fly to whatever you need at that moment. Very good support one. So you've got 2 very good support Warlord traits that go in different directions, and one that is purely about making your Warlord hit better, which is pretty nice. Then you have the Shroud of Heroes under the relics. So only a single relic, and they have two relics, the Dark Angels. There's Shroud of Heroes, which is a very expensive relic, but the equipped model gets a 3+ invulnerable save, and they reduce the AP of all weapons with the Blast, Large Blast, and Spray special rules when resolving against them. So AP 3 becomes AP 4. So that's very cool. Basically, you gain the benefits of being in Gravis armor with a 3+ invulnerable save without having to wear Gravis armor. That's a very, very nice shroud. Then you have the Mace of Redemption. The Mace of Redemption it's somewhere in the mid-range of kind of points heavy, especially since it's exchanging a Power Sword, a Power Axe, Power Maul, a Thunder Hammer, right? Obviously, the cheapest way to get this is to just buy a Power Sword and replace it, but it's more expensive for other things that are replacing it. But it's also very, very good, which is why it is that expense. It is Strength ×2, it's AP 3, so it's Thunder Hammer levels of stat, but it's Crushing 4+, so every 4, 5, or 6 is an extra wound dealt to your opponent. It's Blind, So if your opponent gets hit by it, their weapon skill goes down to 1. It's Bane Chaos, so Chaos, anything with the Chaos keyword, does not get to make invulnerable saves against it. And it's Mastercrafted. Really strong relic, really good when combined with the Caliber Knight for making a really super hard-hitting character who's just going around with this mace just walloping people really reliably. Extra points if you happen to be walloping the shit out of Chaos. And then the Dark Angels have a lot of upgrades. So, upgrades are one of the core things of Space Marines in their core codex and the Long War about how they do a lot of stuff and how they make the most out of all their characters, because Space Marines have a ludicrous, stupid number of characters. The upgrades is how you do it. Now, they have access to the regular ones, barring any ones that are in their restriction, which I don't believe they do. I didn't see any before. And they also have these ones, which are more specialized ones for them. So these are X upgrade, but this way. So there's a little bit that. But the only one we're really going to talk about is the Inner Circle upgrade. And it's kind of pricey. It's actually very pricey at 20 points. That's very expensive as an upgrade. And any Dark Angels character can be upgraded to be part of the Inner Circle. But anything part of the Inner Circle, they get Preferred Enemy Fallen, sure. But they also get a special rule where they always count as holding an objective, regardless of the number of enemy models contesting it. So, objective secured, for those of you who are familiar with 9th editions, those of you, and 7th edition and 8th edition, objective secured is not a thing in Long War outside of very unique special rules. So that right there, the Inner Circle special rule, is incredibly strong. Because so long as your character's on this objective, it doesn't matter if he's surrounded 20 to 1. It's your objective. Just survive. So, yeah. And then all the classic things for Dark Angels here: Ravenwing Champions, Ravenwing Ancients, Deathwing Strike Masters, Deathwing stuff, Deathwing Armor Honors, Deathwing Librarians, all sorts of things you need to make the different kinds of lists that you want with the models that you have available. Then we have the Dark Angels Rites of War. Dark Angels, as you probably, if you're seeing the trend in the Dark Angels, have 2 Rites of War. First is their Deathwing Assault Talon, and this is the Rite of War you bring if you really want to bring an all Deathwing army. If you're planning to soup Deathwing and Ravenwing, you don't bother with either of these Rites of War. You choose one of the generic Rites of War from the Codex Space Marines, and you soup them together there. Or you just don't pick a Rite of War. But if you're planning to go exclusively one or the other, then you have them right here. So the Deathwing Talon, your army has to include a Lieutenant with the Deathwing Strike Master upgrade. Pretty simple. Everything in your army is going to be Deathwing, and if Belial, Master of the Deathwing, is in your army, he has to be your Warlord. No exceptions. And then the benefits you get from that, though, are crazy cool. You now get Deathwing Terminators, which are your unique Terminators that replace your regular Terminators, as troops choices. Dreadnoughts and Land Raiders can purchase Deathwing armor upgrade for 0 points. So you get to bring Dreadnoughts, Land Raiders, and Veterans in this army. And then Deathwing Knights, who are your Super Terminators. They are your most elite and expensive unit. They become limited 2 per detachment instead of limited 1. So, very, very cool, and letting you bring far more Terminators, letting you bring far more of your fancy stuff. So there is that. Because the really strong stuff is limited to force you to either build bigger squads of it, or, you're not going to spam just the craziest, most powerful things you have. That's not the intent of the game, that's not the narrative, that's not how wars are fought in 40k. Deathwing Knights are ludicrously rare Terminators in the lore. And even Deathwing Terminators, taking them as troops, that's just something that the Terminators are rare as it is. The Deathwing, fortunately, happen to have a lot more than the regular person. So yeah. Then you have the Ravenwing Hunt Talon. So, the Ravenwing Talon is one about the Ravenwing, obviously. You have to have a Ravenwing Talon Master. Everything's got to have the Ravenwing or Inner Circle keyword. You can have a mixture. You got to have one of those two. And then Samuel, Master of the Ravenwing. Got to be your Warlord if he's in your army. Pretty simple, right? Then you can take Bike Squadrons as troops. You can take Nephilim Jet Fighters as heavy supports. And Ravenwing Knights, your super special bikers, become limited 2 instead of limited 1. So there's that. They're pretty simple rites of war, but they're very effective in doing what rites of war do, and that's changing how you build your army. Then there's the Dark Angels units, and I'm just going to breeze through these pretty quickly. I mean, you've got Azrael, your chapter master. He's pretty good. He's got brilliant strategist. He's got rites of battle, so he can alter your Force Orc. He can alter his squad special rules. His Lion's Wrath is, pretty good combi weapon. His Sword of Secrets is very cool. It's strength +1, so he's hitting at strength 5. It's AP 1, which is, it's going through everything's armor. It's arcing 5+, so every 5+ to hit is an extra hit with it, and it's mastercrafted. In addition, he's got 4 attacks. He's got a bolt pistol, so he's going up to 5 attacks. He's 6 attacks on the charge. So he's got the same number of attacks on the charge as, Gilman. So he is very good. And he's got, of course, the things that are particularly good. He can be upgraded to be Primaris. He has some interesting rules. He has Inner Circle, so yeah, he's objective secured. But he's got Master of the First, which is something to talk about. And he also has a Lion Helm, which we'll talk about. So, the Lion Helm, we'll start with first. It's very simple. It gives him a 4+ invulnerable save, and it gives his attached unit a 5+ invulnerable save. So, combined with his brilliant strategist, he's very good at supporting a unit and building a bodyguard unit around. And then, the Master of the First. So, he gains the benefits of both the Ravenwing and Deathwing keywords and their special rules from the Broken Wing special rule as part of the Allegiance Dark Angels, but he does not have the Deathwing or Ravenwing keywords. So that is important to keep in mind. So, he gets the Scout, he gets the Skilled Rider, but he also gets he also gets preferred enemy characters, and then he also gets the +1 to hit with a sword. So, yeah. He's pretty neat. Azrael. And he's 155 points. And that's expensive as far as characters go, but he's a very good character. Overall. And then we move into others, like good old Asmodai. Asmodai's one that... Asmodai's been a character that over the editions has suffered. He's been pretty mediocre sometimes all around. But this time around, he's pretty good. He's got Fury of the Lion as his Warlord trait if you bring him as a Warlord. He's Inner Circle. He's Fear 3. He's Zealot 1. He's Hatred. He is all sorts of very, very killy. He's got his Rosarius for 4+ invulnerable save. He's really strong, actually, in this edition here. He's a priest, so he can chant the litanies from the Core Codex book. And his Blades of Reason, they were only strength 3, but now they're AP 2, they're shred, and they're parry. So he can pick between either having shredding AP 2 or strength 5 AP 3 concussive with his power maul. So very good. His very good indeed, really. So, yeah. And you got others like Ezekiel, who's a pretty good Psyker. He's Mastery level 2. He's got his Deliverer pistol, which is, it's an okay pistol. He's got his Traitor's Bane, which is obviously very effective against Fallen. Fallen do not get invulnerable saves. Now, if you think that's never going to matter, I assure you, and we will see this later when we get through the Long War series on other factions and overviews, the Fallen are a fully fleshed out faction of Space Marines, or Chaos Space Marines, you can actually play in the Long War, complete with unique rules and units, which mirror the Dark Angels. So, that actually might be more important, especially for people out there who play Fallen. All 7 of us. because I have Fallen as well. And it's AP 1. A lot of these very cool swords that the Dark Angels characters have are AP 1 to 2, so they're very good swords. And he's got a bunch of other things. And so Ezekiel's pretty solid, but as a Psyker, he's expensive because the psychic powers that he has, Psykers are very expensive because they're so very versatile. And then we've got Belial. Belial's pretty average for like a fully decked out captain. He's the Imperium sword, so he hits stronger and harder. He's got the right to battle because he's a captain. His Sword of Silence is what we're going to talk about real quick. So his Sword of Silence is Strength User. So it's Strength 5. It's Killing, Stroke 3+, and Parry. So, and it's AP 1. So, Parry, he's got the 4+, Feel No Pain in melee. But Killing Stroke. This weapon always wounds infantry type units on an unmodified roll of a 3+. So, he has a lot of attacks that are super reliable against infantry. He is a blender. And he comes in Indomitus Terminator armor. It's pretty good. Now, Samael, you might be looking at the points cost as we go through this. And, points costs are always subject to change as beta testing and discounts get applied from testing and feedback to the game. But right now, he's very expensive because he's also very, very good. Because he's also on a bike. And he's not just on any bike, he's a jet bike unit. So, he's got a great stat line. He's T5, he's 5 wounds, he's weapon skill, ballistics 5, he's initiative 5. The only thing that's holding him back is that he's a 3+ save. He's got a bolt pistol, his Corvex has Storm Bolter and a plasma cannon. He's got his Iron Halo, he's got his Orbital Bombardment, and then he's got all the benefits of being on bike, so Hammer of Wrath, Outflank, Relentless, he can fly because it's a jet bike, he's got a 14-inch move, he's zipping around, he's Knight of Caliban, so he's always hitting on a 3+. I'm going very fast because this guy's super crazy. He's got Rites of Battles because he gets to alter your Force Org chart for Space Marines, and then he has the Raven Sword. And the Raven Sword is Strength +1, so he's hitting at Strength 5, just like Belial. It's Mastercrafted, it's a specialist weapon, so he's not getting any extra attacks with it. But he is getting 3 attacks, 4 attacks on the charge. Keep that in mind. And then it has Blade Charge. On the charge, it becomes Strength ×2, so on the charge it becomes Strength ×2 AP1. So he's absolutely crazy phenomenal good. He's expensive right now. His points probably expect these to go down. But, very strong. And then we're going to go into their other units now that the Dark Angels have. Going into their elites. So then we've got their Deathwing Terminators. So the Deathwing Terminators, they don't look all that different from regular Terminators. They have all the things and standard trimmings that regular Terminators have. Where Deathwing Terminators differ is not anywhere in their stat block. It's down here. In the fact that they have pretty much all the options of tacticals and assaults. So they can take pretty much anything. So they're a mix and match. They're good. And what makes them unique is their equipment. And that, unlike regular Space Marines, you don't have to build for either shooting or sort of shooting, sort of half assault, tactical, or flat out assault. You can build for a much more powerful mixture of the two, and you also have access to some cool stuff and some extra stuff. And you can also be Tartaros or Cataphracti. So, yeah. Then you have Deathwing Knights. So Deathwing Knights, these are your next step up. These are your really strong Terminators. This is your next one up. And these guys are limited 1 per detachment. They come base with maces and storm shields and Indomitus Terminator armor. And the thing about them is that they're weapon skill 5. Now, weapon skill 3 to 4 is the average in this game. So, these guys are gonna be hitting on 3s against most things. Very good. Very, very good. Hitting on 3s is exceptionally powerful. But let's talk about, and there's not else that makes them super unique, other than the fact that they also have the sergeant has the flail, and they have the inner circle special rule, which, means these guys are objective secured, crazy hard to remove. You have to kill them down to a man. But it's the combination of all their war gear together with the weapon skill 5 and their other stuff that makes them really good. So they're in Terminator armor, so they've got a 2+ save. They've got a 5+ invulnerable save with the Indominus armor. And the price to pay for that is a 5-inch movement. But then, they have the mace, which is a pseudo thunder hammer, but without the unwieldy. And then, they have the storm shield, which gives them a 4+ invulnerable save. And they're immune to instant death. Yes. Storm shields give a 4+ invulnerable save and make them immune to instant death. So these guys, they are, in a base size unit, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 10 wounds. 10 wounds that has to be removed with a 2-up, 4-up completely. They're not likely to break. You can't outnumber them on objectives to try and win an objective off them. And they're really hard to outfight. And the 4+ invulnerable save means they're pretty resilient against shooting. And the Storm Shield giving them ignores instant death means that strength 8 plus weapons are not going to just be removing 1 when they go through. So they are beastly. And they have a pretty beastly cost to go with them. Ravenwing Black Knights are basically the Deathwing Knights, but these are your Ravenwing versions. This is your super biker unit. You get 3 of them. They're fairly pricey. In fact, I believe currently they're the same points, but you just have less of them in a squad. But because they're on bikes, they get so many more special rules. On top of that, their Raven Knight bikes come with plasma guns. So they are spitting plasma all over the place. They can take a bunch of different options. They can follow up. They can take Corvus Hammer. They can follow up with Stasis Grenade launches, replacing their plasmas. They can do a lot of different things. Yeah. Then, going to the flyers, we have the Nephilim. So Nephilim is pretty good. It's a fairly decent flyer. It's fairly cheap for its cost. It has all the things that flyers can do, and it's got its Avenger Mega Bolter and its Black Sword missile launchers, and can trade stuff out for las cannons. And so it's very good at hitting both infantry and vehicles. And for 20 extra points, you can make it dedicated for hunting armor. So, fairly decent flyer for its points cost. The Dark Talon. The Dark Talon is your bomber. This one is far more expensive because this is where your Rift Cannon is and where your Stasis Bomb is. So this thing is really strong with its Strength 10 weaponry, its Strength 10 AP1 Stasis. So not only can it delete targets potentially and deal almost reliable guaranteed damage, it can do it to multiple units with the Rift Cannon and the Stasis Bomb. In addition, it has some Hurricane Bolters for extra fire, but it's 2 different Stasis hits. And Stasis, we already covered, is a fantastic ability. And then the Dark Angels, finishing up, have they have their Dark Shroud first. So we'll talk about the Dark Shroud. So the Dark Shroud is a land speeder. It's quite a large land speeder, so it's got some extra toughness. It's 3 wounds, it's 3-up save. It's a little chunk. It's, not anything to really write home about off the bat, really, other than it's cavalry, so it has all the cavalry stuff. It's limited 1 per detachment, and you might be thinking, Why? It doesn't really have any great guns. It's not particularly very tough or killy. Let's talk about the Icon of Old Caliban. The Icon of Old Caliban gives all Space Marine bike, jet bike, cavalry, and aircraft units wholly within 18 inches of this model the benefit of light cover. And this is where Skilled Rider comes in, because if they move, they're getting the benefits of light cover. If they're already benefiting from light cover, they gain heavy cover. You see where this is going and why this is strong? In addition, all attacks from enemy units when targeting a model equipped with this war gear, so the Ravenwing Dark Shroud itself, count the distance when determining range as 2 inches greater than it actually is. So, if you have to shoot this thing at 24 inches, this thing counts as being at 26 inches. So, this is... it's in 100 points of support for the rest of your army. And 18 inches, that's a fairly large bubble of support for a lot of Ravenwing stuff. And they're going to be going to, 5-up cover saves. Which is pretty damn good. Then, if you want something a little bit more killy, here's the Land Speeder Vengeance. The Land Speeder Vengeance is where things are at. The Land Speeder Vengeance has its similar stat line, but this one has an Archaeoplasma Storm Battery, and this is a 4-shot, Strength 8, AP3 plasma gun, so it's a little bit weaker in the AP compared to the normal AP2. It's 1 higher strength, but it has no gets hot. Yeah. So, it is a very solid, reliable, fast-moving, high-damage dealer that can take chunks out of light vehicles, monsters, heavy infantry. So, yeah. For 110 points, it's okay for what it does. In addition, it's fairly mobile as well. So, it's a great fire support to actually bring with your Ravenwing. Especially if you're running a full Ravenwing only list. This guy, in particular, there's something to be said for having that Strength 8 AP3 on hand. So, even against most things, to put this in perspective, the Strength 8 AP3 with 4 shots, if all 4 of those get through and all 4 of those hit and wound, and there's no cover to speak of, that's a dead Carnifex. That's a dead monster. That's a dead... most things that are a walker or monster types, that's a dead one of those. Or, it's at least, on average, realistically, firing against, say, some of the bigger Tyranid monsters, or something like a Wraith Construct, that is 2 wounds likely ripped off of that. 3 wounds on a above average roll. It's pretty good. Because you want to rip off as many wounds as you can from those, because monsters regenerate, so it's very good at that. And then you have, against light vehicles, Strength 8, 9, 10. Okay, so you're penetrating on 2s, 3s against Armor 11, 4s against Armor 12. Okay? And then above that, you don't particularly care about. Because you want to be getting into the rear and side armors where things have those lower armor values. And so while you're not going to be instantly blowing stuff up, you've got a very reliable way of forcing pinning checks on vehicles, blowing weapons off, disabling them, and wrecking them with enough shots, right? So it's not going to flat out explode stuff, but a salvo does have the potential to wreck a vehicle. So there is that. So it is a solid performer. It's nothing super crazy like some of the other Terminator units that you've got in this army, or your other things that are spitting out Strength 10 AP 1 Stasis, or Weapon Skill 5 Strength 8 Crushing 5+ pseudo-maniacs that can't really be killed by instant death weapons and have to be removed painfully wound by bloody wound off an objective. They're nothing that crazy. But anyway, I've talked enough time about the Land Speeder Storm. And that is where we will end this one. That is the end of the Dark Angels. So, next video, we'll be back talking about the white scars. So, I have been Jay from Jade Productions. This has been the Long War Project. Please go check out the Long War Project if you're interested. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions, join the Discords, all that. Till then, peace out.